Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Let's take a look at our wide receiver rankings for week number 2. We'll show you the consensus rankings 1 through 13, and we'll kind of talk through some of the tougher players to rank for us. No real tough ones here on the top of the list. Of the guys, though, Heath, who struggled in week 1, Chase, Neighbors, St. Brown, Brian Thomas, Nico Collins. I hate this. Which one bounces back for you the easiest? Like, which is the no-brainer?
Jamar Chase, but I am hopeful that they're all going to bounce back. We're still ranking them all as top 12 wide receivers. We're acting like there's really no concern. So hopefully, like if they put a similar performance in week 2, we'll have to have a different conversation.
I'll tell you who I'm a little worried about is Nico Collins. It has nothing to do with the matchup. It has everything to do with C.J. Stroud, how he operated, how his offensive line operated, and what that means moving forward for Nico.
Let's show you the list 13 through 24. And yes, hopefully C.J. Stroud can get him going to the level that we expected for Nico Collins. Top 4 wide receiver for me, top 7, I think, overall for almost everybody. So we get to two of the guys on this list that were tough for us to have some ranking spots for them. One guy is Tyreek Hill for me. One guy is Zay Flowers for you. So, Dave, start with Zay Flowers. Why was he tough to rank?
Dude, I am worried that he's going to be the toughest guy for me to rank every single week this season because he showed in week 1 that he's super talented and he got a ton of targets, and Lamar Jackson barely even threw the football. Is this going to be the new normal for the Baltimore Ravens? I feel like we need to see that over and over again before we really count on that happening. Or does he go back to what he was the first 2 years of his career, which is boom weeks every so often, and then a lot of duds, a lot of disappointing weeks along the way? I think he's obviously talented, but this is a Browns defense. Whatever they did last week to Joe Burrow, man, it came out in the numbers for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and so it made me nervous about just putting Zay Flowers that much higher in my rankings. I feel like a broken record. Amazing talent, questionable situation, and now throw on top of that in week 2 a difficult matchup. It makes my head spin about exactly where to put him.
Listen, he's a sit for me. Exactly a lot of the reasons you said, and his history against Cleveland, not great. In 4 career meetings, he's averaging just over 10 PPR points per game. No touchdowns in those 4 meetings. So I hope what we saw last week is a sign of things to come, because it'd be fantastic, especially the more Zay Flowers fell in drafts. But I'm just a little bit concerned that what they did to the Bengals receivers in terms of the Browns defense, they do contain Zay Flowers a little bit in this matchup. Tyreek Hill is very difficult, I think, moving forward until we see a better Dolphins offense, at least for me, to rank. So he's just inside my top 24. I guess you guys have him a little bit higher based on our consensus rankings. Heath, when you look at Tyreek Hill, we're not going to bring up the off-field stuff that he might be dealing with right now. Just from an on-field perspective, Tua looked awful. The offensive line's a mess. I know the Patriots defense we don't have Christian Gonzalez, at least as of now. He's going to try and play, but miss week 1. If you have him, you're starting him.
Right.
But what's the expectation level?
I don't think you can have an expectation. It's just you have to start him, and that's the same way I feel about Zay Flowers, really. Like, you do what Zay Flowers did in week 1, I'm not putting you on my bench, especially for a young guy like that. We've seen Tyreek Hill, even last year when Tua was healthy, this was still an offense that was successful passing the football. The Patriots just gave up 364 yards to Geno Smith. I'm just going to start Tyreek Hill. I'm probably going to start Jalen Waddle. I don't feel that bad about Tua as a high-end QB2 either. If they're bad against the Patriots, then we might just have to throw in the towel.
All right, so the alarm will sound if we get to next week and we don't have a strong performance, Tyreek Hill against the Patriots. And then the guy that's toughest to rank for you is going to be probably a every week situation as well as Travis Hunter.
I hope not. I mean, the fact that as a rookie in his first game, he saw 8 targets, caught 6 of them, and one of the 2 he didn't catch might have been like a 60-yard touchdown pass if Trevor Lawrence had thrown it 1 yard farther. Instead, it was an interception. It was a very encouraging debut where he barely played on defense. But now we get to talk about he's going to play a little bit more on defense. Now, what does that mean? We were sitting in this room and we saw Pete Prisco talking about how he might start on defense and play most of the snaps. If that happens, then we're never going to know what to do with Travis Hunter. Hopefully, it's just a small uptick in terms of defensive play, and he's still a full-time wide receiver. For now, he's a boom-bust number 3 wide receiver.
Let's talk about the guys we're looking to start for this week. And for you, Dave, it's Jameson Williams. For you, Heath, it's Jakobi Meyers. For me, it's DK Metcalf. I'll just get DK out of the way real quick. Revenge game. He's taking on his former team with the Seahawks. I was encouraged. 4 catches, 83 yards last week against the Jets, where he was getting shadow covered by Sauce Gardner, but still able to give you 12.3 PPR points. I hope that's the floor most weeks. So no touchdowns, despite the fact that Aaron Rodgers threw for 4. So the fact that Rodgers played well is encouraging. Hopefully DK Metcalf carries that over against his former team. Tell me why you like Jameson Williams.
Well, Seattle's changing their cornerbacks too, so that's even better because now they've got some guys starting that might not be as experienced and might not be as ready for DK Metcalf. I think Jameson Williams has one of the highest ceilings in fantasy. I think the Lions are going to go right back to where they were last year. They're taking on the Bears. Their secondary was not so great by the time the game ended against the Vikings in week number 1. They're getting Jalen Johnson back. I don't think Jalen Johnson will necessarily be on Jameson Williams. He's a good number 2 wide receiver this week.
I'd have a hard time criticizing the Bears secondary at all. They gave up like 143 yards passing in that game, and Jameson Williams had
it was 20 attempts.
2% route win rate last week in the new offensive scheme for the Lions. I think he's still a boom-bust number 3 wide receiver, and he does have a lot of upside on a weekly basis, but there's absolutely zero floor for Jameson Williams.
Did average over 15 PPR points per game in his home games last year. So hopefully going back home, we know is usually pretty good for Jared Goff and this offense. So I do have some encouraging feelings for Jameson Williams to bounce back, but understandably so. It's going to be a little disappointing if he's not running the type of routes that we want to see. All right, let's go to Jakobi Meyers, one of the most underrated wide receivers in fantasy year in, year out.
Every year. And week 1 could not have been more encouraging for him. In the Chip Kelly offense, they lead the league in pass rate over expected. This was not a run-heavy offense of any kind at all. And then over 55% of their targets go to 2 guys, Jakobi Meyers and Brock Bowers. It's wheels up for Jakobi Meyers. Full PPR, he's a wide receiver 2.
8 of his last 11 games going back to last year, 13.7 PPR points or more. He just gets the job done, and
floor
every time he just gets overlooked by us in drafts. So maybe should have been a number 2 wide receiver, especially after Amari Cooper decided to retire. The sit wide receivers for us for week number 2. For you, Heath, it's Michael Pittman. For you, Dave, I'm surprised, Ricky Pearsall, and I'm sitting Zay Flowers. So Pittman, is it just because he's going to see a lot of Patrick Surtain?
You can just say that name and we can be done. That's all you need. The Denver Broncos don't start a wide. Like maybe if it's a top 12 wide receiver, you start him against the Broncos and hope they finish as a top 25 guy, but don't start Michael Pittman against him.
He's not playing against Miami anymore.
Why Ricky Pearsall?
Because it's Mac Jones under center, and I'm just not sure what to expect from Mac Jones or the 49ers offense. And I thought the Saints secondary was okay. Obviously, they gave up one big play to Marvin Harrison. There was another one that was for the taking that Kyler Murray missed. I think Ricky Pearsall isn't going to be like Brian Thomas Jr. was last year. He's more of like a flex play than he is a surefire number 2 fantasy wide.
I don't know. It's Juwan Jennings not there and George Kittle being out, and the fact that what we saw just last year with what the backup quarterbacks did for Kyle Shanahan, even Josh Dobbs, who doesn't throw the ball very well.
Brian Thomas.
And what Brian Thomas did with Mac Jones.
That's a different receiver on a different team.
Totally. But Mac Jones showed you, hey, I know that guy can catch, and I'm going to throw it to him. And it's a small sample size. 4 games in his career with at least 6 targets. 4 games over 14 PPR points.
Let's see him do it with Mac Jones. That's all I'm saying.
I would have said the same thing about Brian Thomas, and Brian Thomas was a superstar last year with Mac Jones. All right, we're going to take a break right now. We come back and get into the tight ends that you're starting and sitting and looking at the rankings for week number 2.